Good evening. It's now 6 p.m. and the October 21st meeting of the Dublin San Ramon Services District Board of Directors is called to order. Please join me in the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving on to item 3, roll call, please.
Director Duarte,
Here.
Director Von Heater-Leopold,
Here.
Director Govinda Rao,
Here.
Vice President Halkett,
I'm here.
President Goel.
Present. Moving on to item 4, special announcement and or activities.
No special announcements this evening.
Thank you. Moving on to item 5, public comment. At this time, those in the audience are encouraged to address the board on any item of interest that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and not already included on tonight's agendas. A comment should not exceed 5 minutes. Are there any speaker cards from the members of the public?
No speaker cards.
Thank you. Moving on to item 6, agenda management.
No recommended changes.
Thank you. Moving on to item 7, consent calendar. Matters listed under this item are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless requested by a member of the board or public prior to the time the board votes on the motion to adopt. Is there a motion to approve the items under consent?
I'll move.
I'll second.
I got a motion by Director Govinda Rao and a second by Director Von Heater-Leopold. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any noes? Any abstentions? The motion carries unanimous. Moving on to item 8, item 8A, authorize execution of the Dublin Unified School District's district campus fire line agreement. Staff.
Good evening, President Goel, members of the board. I'm Steve Delight, Engineering Services Director. The item before you tonight is an agreement between the Dublin Unified School District and DSRSD to propose to transfer ownership of fire hydrant loops on campus property. So throughout the district's service area, the district owns and operates hydrant loops on 13 Dublin Unified School District campuses. These loops only have hydrants on them, and they exist within easements on the campuses. When the schools were constructed, the infrastructure was dedicated to the district. If you take a look at the picture on the screen of my short slideshow presentation here, this is a typical school site. And if you, I guess, look carefully from this distance or maybe on your screen in front of you, the blue lines going across the campus are the actual water main, and then the red dots that have the numbers by them are the locations of fire hydrants. And you can see it kind of loops throughout the school campus, around the building, and the fire hydrants are placed, per fire department standards. And then if you also look like near the top right of the screen, and let me see if I can make this work, kind of like up here, near just above that dot right there, if you look really closely, there's an M that signifies where the potable meter is, and this is typical on most sites. The school's domestic service is fed from outside the property, and only the hydrant loop is on the site that we operate and maintain. And so, although each school site is different, if I had one for all 13 schools, they would all be a little bit different, but fairly similar. The arrangement of operating hydrant loops on school campuses is not standard. Other agencies like East Bay Mud and Hayward, they would stop at the property line, and the school district would control the hydrant loop within the site. And in fact, when this began, the school district first approached us with the idea of transferring ownership. They noted that this is kind of atypical that we would own these items. And so through discussion with the school district, it was determined that transferring ownership would be beneficial to both the school and DSRSD, the district. The school requires approval from the Division of State Architect when they're making any changes, and the state fire marshal, which means they need 3 approvals once we're included, and often they're similar or conflicting comments as they're making changes. Also, it would relieve the school district of setback requirements around these pipelines as they move portables or do other things within their campus. For us, operating and maintaining these items on site has become more difficult as time has gone on. It's like fingerprinting and access has become more difficult to get on the site. Another benefit to the district is there is a reduction in pipeline that we'll eventually need to replace. So, over the past year or so, staff worked with the school's legal counsel and our legal counsel to come up with the agreement that's attached to the staff report. The key items is the school district acknowledges that they're responsible for the operation, maintenance, and eventual replacement of these hydrant loops. They acknowledge that they're going to cover the cost to install the backflow prevention assemblies that are required to isolate their system from the DSRSD system and, install these in accordance with DSRSD standards. They will also ensure that the addition of these items still allows their on-site fire systems to meet all fire requirements. They also agree, this is a big one to me, not to connect anything to the fire hydrant loop, such as like a water fountain or some other domestic use that would not be appropriate for a hydrant loop. They will notify us when they're doing routine maintenance and cleaning of the system in case water is used, so we can make sure to properly track that. And then also, they're going to create a schedule of when each site will be converted. Of the 13 campuses, 10 will be converted over the next several years. 2 are a little more complicated, and the agreement has that covered. Like they will be converted when they do a major remodel at the site. Like kind of how they redid Dublin High School. Next time they do that, they will bring it into the to the compliance as the agreement states. Let's see here. So that's that. And then the third site is actually on a site that the city of Dublin owns the property, the 13th site. So eventually, if the city dedicates that property to the school district, then we would go through with that conversion. Let's see here. So the school district approved this agreement at their October 14th meeting. Staff recommends approving the agreement. And the next steps would be for the school district to create their overall plan to convert each site, and upon completion of all of the pieces and parts of the agreement and the backflows installed, the district will quitclaim the easement and ownership of those pipelines back to the school district. And staff is available if you have any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. I'll start on my right-hand side. Any
I
questions?
don't have any questions.
None? Okay. Director Duarte, any questions?
So you're happy with their commitment to make sure that they're going to operate and maintain and replace to our standards?
Yes.
That's my only question.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you again for the presentation, Steve. Just 2 things. When you were mentioning about them putting those valves for preventing backflow, so will there be someone from our agency to inspect that afterwards once it's put in place to make sure that that has been done correctly?
Yes, and they will also submit plans to say exactly how they're going to do it, and our personnel will watch the installation and
Great.
make sure it's all done to standard. Yes.
Okay, no, thank you. And I know, reading in the packet here as well as what you said for those 10 sites, you mentioned several years. Do we have a better projection on what time frame that is, or is it still kind of up in the air right now?
I think it'll probably take them 2 or 3 years to do all the work.
Okay.
I mean, they also have to time it when school's out and all
Sure.
of those sorts of things.
Okay, great. That's all the questions I had. Thank you again.
I have 3. Doherty Valley, what's the status of the Doherty Valley schools where we also serve water? Are they on a loop that do we own that, or?
So Doherty Valley is exactly the same. It's a different school district.
I know that.
Yeah.
So are they going to come? Are we going to have to deal with that one too?
Well, we should probably work with them to make it so all the schools are the same.
Got it. And then from a balance sheet perspective, because we're going to take an asset off of our balance sheet, it's going to go away. I assume it's going to go through the income statement. I know it's not the right thing for a public agency, but I call them income statements because I'm a private sector guy. So do we have a kind of a idea of the hit we're going to take as we move these assets from our side of the ledger to their side of the ledger?
We haven't done any specific research on this yet, but we're sort of estimating somewhere around $10 million.
Yeah, makes sense. Net of depreciation, of course. The older schools are probably zero because they're probably
That's
Would be.
correct. Because the life on the maximum life on these types of lines would be like 50 years. So any school built before 1975 would already be fully depreciated. So we only need to look at the schools that are built after 1975.
got it. Makes sense. And then we're going to move the fire loop out. Domestic water in these schools. Do we? Is that more like a house where like we stop at the meter and then they have everything on their side?
Correct. Correct. Yeah. So that on the drawing, that's why the meter up on the upper right of this picture, we would own the service up to the water meter box, and then beyond that is all school district owned, domestic. Traveling throughout the building.
So the fire and everything else will be on there. And
Correct.
All right. That's standard. Cool. Thanks.
All right, very good. We got three quick questions. We obviously don't have any requirements for state of good repair or anything of that nature. They're just taking it as is, the existing facilities that we are turning over to them, right? So there's no requirements for us to do anything at this point. You mentioned that there's going to be two more entities that have to accept and approve this agreement or this transition.
What I meant by that was when the school is doing any modifications, they have to go through the Division of State Architect and the State Fire Marshal for approvals. Anytime they're doing anything out there, so they don't need to approve this transfer. Just the school district does, which they approved at their meeting on the 14th.
So essentially, our action today finalizes it to move forward.
Correct.
Okay. So there's no time lapse between now and then. Okay. So then my last question is going to be mute, but I'll just go ahead and ask it for the sake of it. If any break occurs between now and the execution of this agreement, it's considered transitioned?
I mean, like if there's a leak starting right this second, I suppose it would be
We own it.
it would be on us to take care of it. Yes.
All right. Very good.
And maybe I can add too is that ownership doesn't transfer until the school district completes all the work for a site, and then we quit claim. So there's a process for each site.
So each site is a different date. Okay.
Correct. Because
So-
they have to install the backflow devices. We have to inspect. We have to actually do the paperwork to transfer ownership of the assets over to the school district.
But in what I understand the example, it could take them several years to do that.
Several years to, I think what Steve is estimating is it could take several years to complete all the 10 sites, depending on how they sequence them with school being in or out.
So they won't technically come off of our ledger until that time happens. So we're still maintaining some level of responsibility until they do their fiduciary.
It'll go correct,
Yep.
one school at a time.
It'll go one or two schools. I don't know how they're going to bundle their contracts. They might try to knock out a couple each summer. There's a couple that are queued up ready to go right now. So
So is there any time requirement that we're putting on them, like a decade or?
I can chime in on that. In the agreement, there is a 30 days between the effective date. So when the signatures are applied, then they have 30 days to provide an estimated schedule for doing all of the work. So at that point, that's a mutually agreed timeline. So if it's taking too long, Steve says that's taking too long, and negotiate that to a shorter period.
Okay. So in a sense, the binding agreement comes back in 30 days when they give us an estimated timeline of completion by site.
Well, once you have the binding agreement, everyone signed, then you agree on the timeline. So the timeline is they come back and say, it's going to take 3 years, and here's where we think each school is going to come into, and that's what they should stick with. But there's no outside timeline. If there was issue that came up that a school couldn't be done for an extended period of time for some reason because of, anything that could come up. You keep ownership until that school is complete.
Got a question. Steve, are you aware of any campus or campuses that are close to being ready for the transfer?
Um, yes, I know there's one, and I can't think of the name right now off the top of my head, but I can get back to you on that.
Just curious.
Yeah.
With that, I'll move to public comment. Does anyone wish to make a comment? Do we have any speaker cards?
No speaker cards.
Seeing none, bring it back for any remaining board questions and or a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve the motion.
Got a motion?
I'll second.
So I got a motion by Director Duarte, a second by Director Von Heater Leopold. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstention? The motion carries unanimous. Moving on to item 8B, receive a presentation on the draft water conservation master plan. Staff.
All right. Good evening, President Goel, members of the board. I'm still Steve Delight, the Engineering Services Director. And tonight, Irene Soroso is going to deliver a presentation on the draft water conservation master plan. Before she gets started, I want to mention a few things that we've learned. And Irene's going to go into all of this with more detail, and I'm hopefully not going to take too much of what she's going to say. So overall, this plan took a little longer than we expected, but that's because the state has still been developing a portion of the regulations. So trying to wait out all of those things took a little longer. And then another, just thing of note, like the district DSRSD is in good shape to meet these new regulations because of certain things. Like, for example, we have AMI. Another good thing the district has going forward is roughly 75% of our system is pretty new. It's 35 or 30 years old, 30 years young. We'll go that way with it, which means like the homes associated with all of these newer pipelines and these newer assets, they were built with water conservation in mind. Newer fixtures, newer plumbing, newer everything. Also for the district, we're lucky because a large portion of our outdoor irrigation is on recycled water, right? Up to about 25% of our total outdoor water use is met with recycled water. There will be, to comply, an added level of effort to monitor and track, to report on our water use. But we have time to work with our customers and our other Tri-Valley partners to refine our recycled water programs, make adjustments as needed to comply with the long-term regulations. So again, Irene's going to share the results in detail, and we're looking forward to any input the board may wish to provide. With that, I'll turn it over to Irene.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening, President Goel, members of the board. My name is Irene Soroso. I'm a senior engineer with CIP and Planning Divisions. So tonight, I'll present the draft Water Conservation Master Plan. This is a planning effort to provide a framework for updating the district water conservation program. So the agenda today, we'll go over the purpose of the master plan or the drivers, and then reviewing the current program, and followed by the, go over the comprehensive methodology for the master plan itself, and then looking at the wide range of program options from the analysis, and then we'll close the presentations with recommendations and the next steps. So before I start diving in, there's a lot of acronyms that I'll use in the presentation. So here's the slide just to give you a little bit of guide when I mention some of the acronyms, but I'll try to use the long-term terminologies. So just want to emphasize here, though, conservation is not new to DSRSD. This is a key element that DSRSD been using for our supply planning efforts since the 1990s. And however, with the most recent climate change and also the recent intense drought, the state of California conservation regulations is getting tighter. So the objectives of this master plan is basically will help looking at the compliance to meet the new regulations. And then also evaluate the current and the new water conservation measures in order to close any gaps that we find in our current programs. Before I starting here, it's basically just showing timelines on the regulations that coming in the California. It's been since the severe drought in the 2015, two bills were signed into law to establish a resilient and long-term approach for water conservation. And this law basically, these two bills basically establish water use efficiency standards. And this standards is used to calculate a water budget. And then 4 years after that, AB 1157 was signed into law to further reduce the indoor water standard. And then from the recent drought, SB 1572 was actually signed into law to prohibit the use of potable water for irrigating the non-functional turf for commercial, industrial, and institutional properties. So all these three regulations are taking place and making it harder for conservation. Before we started, just a refresher on the Making Conservation's California way of life. The state adopted this urban water use objectives. This is basically a summations of 5 budgets. And listed here is the indoor, outdoor residentials budget, commercials, outdoor budget, water loss, and then also adjustments that applicable for some agencies. The state basically stated that supplier do not have to meet each standard individually. The budget are set in the district level, so it's not enforced in the individual customers. And then there's a component on agriculture and indoor CII that are not part of these objectives. However, the indoor CII water use will be covered under performance measure that need to be made by DSRSD. So I'm going to go over each of the components here. The first one is the residential indoor budget. And I'm showing here is the compliance timeline. So starting this year, the standard was used for calculating the budget dropped from 55 to 47. And 5 years from now, it will drop to 42. And as a reminder too, right, this is just one of the budget, it's the cumulative or additions of all of those 5 components. So in order to see how is the district doing is this graph basically to the right showing the budget versus the actual water use. Just to give a little bit background that we only submitted 1 year of our calculations to the state, which is on the 2024. And this graphic basically showing the blue bar is the budget, the indoor budget, and the green bar is showing our actual, and the light green is basically showing the estimated indoor budget based on the population growth in our service area. So if you can see here, by 2030, where the standard going to drop to 42, this is where we start seeing our indoor, the projected indoor water use is going to be above the budget. So before I'm moving into the outdoor budget discussions, I just want to give a perspective of the landscape efficiency factor that actually being used as a standard in the calculations of the outdoor water use budget. So this is just a show figures of what is the landscape efficiency factor when it's above 1. This is when we start seeing like overspray, water ponding, and then the less than 1 or close to 1 LEF. Before I explain that, the LEF is actually efficiency of a landscape. When they design the landscape, how much of water is being used for the plant type. So for LEF that close to 1, you still see a green grass basically, or green lawn. But when you start moving down to like 0.75 LEF, that's when you start seeing like California native plants being implemented as part of the landscape, and also more efficient irrigation system that being implemented. And then for the LEF that less than 5 or 0.34 here, it's pretty much is a more drought tolerance plant that being planted with potentially some trees that require some water. So how is the residential outdoor budget calculated? This is a timeline. Starting this year, there's a 3 factors that State Water Board adopted for assisting residential housing. The LEF, or the landscape area landscape efficiency factors, is 0.8. So assuming that that's native plants, some greens, and then for recycled water, LEF of 1 is actually adopted to be used as a standard. And then for the new constructions, LEF of 0.55. So the factors actually being reduced to meet the future requirement. So 10 years from now, this number for assisting housing is going to drop. And then by 2040, it will pretty much very close to the new constructions for housing. But the recycled water property is still going to use the 1.0 LEF. And then here's just to see what is our actual water use in 2024. Showing here our outdoor water use actually pretty low compared to the budget. For the calculations on the estimated outdoor water use, staff is assuming that the irrigable area data that we got from DWR is going to be corrected in the future, because what we received from DWR in 2020, the data is, there's some inaccuracy for our surface area. So we have to go back and make corrections and then submitted the data to DWR to be approved for approval to use in our calculations for next year. So this is something that staff is planning to work on in a couple years. So moving to another outdoor budget, but for a different type of customer. This is for CII, the commercial site. And you can see here the standard on the assisting facility and recycled water pretty close to residential. However, for the new constructions on CII, it's dropped to 0.45. So ultimately, by 2040, it will the calculations for our budget will use 0.45 for assisting and new construction, except for recycled water sites. So this basically highlight the importance of recycle program. It helps to bring our budget up. And for this one, we don't have a data to estimate the actual water use because we're still waiting for the landscape area measurement data from DWR. They projected to complete either by end of this year, or I think most likely will be next year, early next year, that we'll get the data. So this is the fourth component of it, is the water loss budget. In 2022, DSRSD water loss standard was set by DWR at 10.7 gallon per connections per day. And the regulatory requirements stated that after 2028, DSRC is required to maintain 15.7 gallons per connections per day average. Has to be below that number. And this is based on the most 3 recent years data, meaning that on 2028, the data that will be compared to is from 2025, 2026, and 2027. So the average of those 3 years have to be below 15.7. And the next graph next to it is actually comparing our budget and actual water use. And you see in here, our real loss is higher than our budget. So I just want to give a little bit background. The real loss is basically unbilled, unmetered water use. It's like whether it's a water theft, it's breaks or any leaks in our system that we didn't catch or we have not catch. So there's the important that we do have a CIP projects where we're going to replace our pipelines as they're getting older. We also have a meter replacement project in place that potentially these two projects or programs will help us reduce our water loss. So this is just give a little bit background on the data on the water loss since 2018 to 2024. We're preparing for 2025 submissions, but this is the data we have comparing to the real loss standard at 10.7. You know, we are within that 5 gallon per connection per day of the standard. Just want to give a perspective, though, compared to the statewide in California, according to DWR data, the 3 year from the 3 years water audit, DSRSD standard or DSRSD was within the 13% of 400 utility out in California. So our water loss is considered pretty low with other agency that having higher water loss. So like I mentioned, the urban water use objectives target is actually one number. It's not individual bucket. So this graphic is trying to stack it up to see and make a comparisons. The 2024 that we're reporting to the State Water Board, we actually 14% below the target. So we did meet our target. By 2030, the estimated number is going to be very close to our target, but we're still going to be projected to meet our target. And then by 2035, this is where we will slightly above the target and we potentially miss our target, but I think this is something that we will have to take into our reviewing our program and make sure that, what do we need in order to close the gap and then meet the regulatory requirement. So looking at the current program, we break it down here in a 2 bucket. One bucket is a program that administered by Zone 7 Water Agency. They led this program and with the support of DSRC staff. 2 program here is the rebate and then also the educational resources and events that Zone 7 hosted in collaboration with DSRSD staff. And then the other bucket is all the programs that we have that administered by DSRSD through either our current program. Is the water saving devices that we gave to our customer, our MI and AquaHawk portal that we make it available for our customer to catch leak. And then also our customer outreach program where we share any water conservation tips through social media events or website and bill inserts. So just an overview of the program results from the last fiscal year, so fiscal year 2025. We're able to process 97 rebates, providing 97 rebates, and then hosted 10 conservation events. And then on the AMI and the AquaHawk portal itself, we do have a 47% of portable customer sign up on AquaHawk account. And that's kind of like help our program. So looking at the methodology using the water master plan, this master plan actually create also a model, conservation model that will be used as a tool for us. Some of the factors consider that put it into the model is our historical rebates and program participation data, our baseline water use and demand projecting, and then also community survey results. For this one, I will cover on the next slide to give you a little bit more detail on the survey results. And then from this model, basically, we create 4 programs to identify any measure that we need in order to close the gap. So here's the survey overview. We did the survey last year for 2 weeks. There is a 400 participants in our service area. And then there is a multiple questions were asked to our customer, like I think more than 20 questions. But the big take away is our customer do care about saving water. And then the respondents, basically, majority of them believe conservation is very important. And the reason behind it is because of climate change, the drought that we've seen more droughts now, and then also supply reliability for them. Other key takeaway is our customer already taking steps to conserve. Basically, more than half of them have making behavior changes to conserve water. I think this is also an effect from the last drought, and then it's carry over because once you have a conservation behavior, sometimes after drought, it's carry on after that. Our customer don't change. And then more than half of them also identify leaks and trying to repair leaks as soon as they found it. And then slightly close to 50%, like a little bit less than half of them, they actually apply our rebates program. They already utilize our rebates program too. One of the things is the questions that ask is identify any challenges or opportunity for the district to improve. One of the things is the responding was saying that making conservations is very expensive. Cost is something that they think why they're not doing any conversions on the loan. And then secondly, our customer also looking for educations, like how to save more water when they already do using less. Third is basically program outreach. How can we help them basically providing more information how to save water? And from the customer education and program outreach itself, I think the good news is our public affairs have been working really hard trying to ramping up our website. So there will be a website launching couple months, where it will be easier to find all of these conservations tips in our website, because I think right now we just have so much information in there. It's a little bit harder to find those information. So we'll make it, the new website will make it more clear and easy to find information. So the last questions that was asked to our customer, basically looking at what other opportunity that we can have is if we offering certain programs, would they actually participate? And then this is the answer from them. Basically, they indicated they would participate in the rebates, although the number percentage is low, but they do express an interest to participate in there. However, I think gray water rebates a little bit harder, even though we have customers that willing to participate. What we found out from talking to other agency, especially our neighboring city of Livermore, that providing rebates for gray water, there's very low participants, because I think some of the customer, when they find out how to even the simple landscape, laundry to landscape system. Sometimes the way the house is built, the structure it's just not easy to implement a gray water system for them. So I think that's why a lot of agencies found that the participants are actually low. Some of these programs that was identified here, there's opportunity for regional efforts, like the home water audits. That's something that I think can be implemented as a regional, with Zone 7 taking the lead and retailers supporting Zone 7. So there'll be a discussions on that. And then workshops, I think there's already starting conversations with Zone 7, like how to make the workshops more feasible and easier for our customer to register. So like I mentioned, the model include the demand and then projecting the demand to see like how much of water saving we can have. So in this graph here, basically the line showing our existing demand. You can see here we do have some drop in the 2021 to 2022 due to the drought, right? But then we do have a rebound. However, in the rebounds between 2023 to 2024, we don't see the full rebound that we've seen before. So this is basically indicating the conservation behavior that our customer retain after the drought. And then here's the projected. There's some growth in our system. So the model basically include the projections up to 2055. And then typically we do have a passive conservations, which is like, for newer homes, they use a low flow fixtures. And then for older houses, usually they start replacing as the owner start replacing the old fixture. So it's a passive conservations that going naturally anyway. And then the estimation is we'll see a 10% reductions by 2055 due to passive conservation. So in the model, we do consider 21 measure. This is actually selected from wide range of measure available out there in the industry. And then some of the considerations on this selection was looking at the environmental benefits, the potential of water saving, and then customer equitability, customer interest and acceptance. Those are coming from the survey. So all this actually being considered when the measure was selected. And just want to show you the model. It looks very dense and complicated, but this is a list cost planning decision support system model. It's a tool that will be available for staff in the future when we need to reevaluate our measures or move around measure or adding new measure. But what showing in here is it has all. On the far right here is all the data that fitted into the model. We see our growth projection, demographic information, consumptions data. So all of this actually fitting into the model. And then this is the 21 measure that we identify where we're going to use it to evaluate the potentials for each of the customer categories. So like single families, the SF, MF, the single family residential, commercials, institutions, or outdoor landscape area. So from that model, basically, the consultant helped us to actually identify 4 programs. Although it's 4 programs, Program A is actually our DSRSD current conservation program because we want to look at it in our current program. What do we need at what year that we will start need a new measures? Program B is basically adding the current program with a mandatory compliance that we have to do because of the regulatory requirement. And then Program C is looking at Program B, so it's add-on. It's basically we just keep add-on in here, building it up. Including Program B, plus any measure that chosen for their cost effectiveness, meaning that they save water, but it will not cost a lot of to implement that program. And then Program C is basically looking at everything, including Program C, and then also other measures that will save us a lot of water. So before this slide, basically, I'm going to give all the list of the measure, but I didn't cover Program A because that's our current program. So in this Program B, we'll introduce 3 new compliance measures, which is for the non-functional turf and also for the urban water use objective target. Those are the compliance that we have to meet. And then for Program C, it's basically with all the regulatory requirement plus 2 new measures that will looking at, one of them is looking at AMI data and utilizing our AMI data to look at our customer based on their usage. This is one of the example that whether identify major leaks or, high usage on their MI data. And then also another one is the customer engagement landscape water calculator that will help our customer when they plan to renovate their outdoor landscape area. They can utilizing this to designing it. So program D, as I mentioned, this is more focused on the water saving. So there's a few measures added to it. One of them is introducing the residential's water budgeting. So it can help if our customer has a tool to look at it, how much of water they use and then compare to. And then one of the thing also have prohibit once through cooling. This is for the ice making facility. And then the fourth is basically enhancements of the current program, the irrigation system upgrades, and also the landscape conversions removal. And the good news is these enhancement programs has been approved by Zone 7 board, I believe last month. Because concurrently, when we're working on our conservation program, we already start conversations with Zone 7 on our committee meeting to ask for increase on the rebates. And that was brought up to the board as an item and it was approved. So starting from now, we have an increased rebates. This just gives an overview of the comparisons in terms of the water saving and the administrative costs for all those 4 programs. Just want to point in here that this is strictly just DSRSD administrative costs. It does not include Zone 7 costs. So just want to make sure, this is just DSRSD. So as you can see, the regulatory component program B that we have to implement because of the mandatory requirement, there will be additional $50,000 that needed in order to administer that program. And then as the measure added, the cost getting higher in here. But then it's showing the saving, right? The water saving by implement program B, we'll see an annual water saving, like double our annual water saving there. So now the recommendations based on this study is implementing a phase approach. One is we'll implement the program B, consider to implement program B because I think that's a regulatory requirement that we need to meet. And then as soon as we get more data from DWR, we will review our estimates again and then see what do we need in order to meet the regulatory requirement. That's when the program, the phase 3 coming in, pulling from program D to figure out what measure we need to add it in order to meet our regulatory requirement if we couldn't meet after past 2035. So this is just a comparisons, the same slide that I have before early on, but this is like by implemented program B, what our projected will look like. So basically by 2035, we will be able, we projected to be able to meet our regulatory compliance. So next step from here, staff will evaluate resources needed to implement program B because I think with the regulatory requirement, there's a lot of reporting. And then public affairs will evaluate ways to strengthen our conservation outreach to our customers. And then we're also going to share the recommendations with Zone 7 and other retailers in order to identify, as I mentioned, there's a program that measures that we should actually collaborate in a regional level. So that's conclude my presentation, and staff happy to answer any question you may have.
Thank you. That was a very thorough presentation. And I'm pretty sure we are all going to have a little bit more questions coming your way as a result. So with that, I'll start off on my left-hand side. Go ahead.
Thanks. Irene, thank you very much for that great presentation. Just had a couple of questions. You know, when we talk about the projected water use and, you know, what's budgeted versus what's estimated, and like when we're looking at like 2035, we were looking at, you know, that we were going to probably not meet some of those, you know, those projections. And so do you have some other thoughts or ideas on how we can mitigate some of these measures, you know, or some things to help, you know, meet our goals?
I think I also want to point it out that because even though I show it one component at a time that we are not meeting, but the regulatory requirement is meeting the overall target, right? The submissions as all the three. And then one thing that we do have seen an opportunity is in our outdoor water use. I think that's a great opportunity to implement like the increasing the rebates and hoping that with the increased rebate enhancements that we have right now, we'll have more customer to convert their lawn. And then also for non-functional turf, we're going to work on identify sites where we're going to provide information to them and see if they're interested to actually apply for the rebates.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, so individually, there may be some we may be missing, but as an aggregate,
Aggregate,
yeah,
yes.
we'll
Be able to,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, no, thank you. I appreciate that clarification. The other thing too, and it just out of curiosity, I think it was on slide 23 when we talked about proposed new programs, and you mentioned about workshops, and I wanted to ask about accessibility to the public on those workshops. Would that be in person? Would they be like a Zoom Teams type of workshop? You know, like a video conference? You know, so just wanted to see how, because if we want to be able to get more people to participate, want to make sure that we can figure out a way, you know, that we can, you know, reach out to our public.
Yeah, so the current workshop that we have on I think the landscape, what do you call it? For the landscape supervisor is in person. After the what do you call it, the pandemic, like it's now we actually host it in persons, and we do recognizing it from a couple of events that we hosted in DSRSD or even in Pleasanton. Typically we get a lot of people register, but the actual attendees is actually not as much as the registrations. And this already being discussed in Zone 7, like our committee meeting, to ask Zone 7 to look into providing also a webinar, so online, because I think a lot of times all these workshops sometimes is on the weekend or is after work. So it's just hard for people to juggle between coming off the work and then coming to the workshop. So it's the discussions that we are having right now with Zone 7 to look at a workshop and also on webinar, and also providing just a video, a recording that we can post it online, that people can, on their time that available, they just go in and then watching it. So it is discussions that already starting right now with Zone 7.
Great. No, thank you, Irene. Because yeah, I think we just want to try to reach out and be able to get more people, hopefully, signing up for this and figuring out what ways we can do that. But no, I appreciate you sharing that those discussions are already occurring. That's all I had for today. Thank you again, Irene. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Director Halkett.
No, I'm good.
All right, Director Van Leopold.
I have three, actually. When we notify a customer that their usage is high and we suspect they have a leak, can we tell them what's leaking?
From our AMI meter system, we cannot really pinpoint that where's the leak happening, but there is technology out there that the customer can install on after the meter that has more that technology to identify where's the leak is actually occur. Those are something that I think state water board also start looking into. It's called Flume. Flume is one of manufacturer, but there's multiple devices out there that you can go to that detail and identify. But because we already have a AMI, I mean, at least they already get one notification. They have a potential leak that they can look into.
Can't tell what's leaking. I
Yeah.
had someone tell me that they got a letter from us saying their toilet was leaking.
Yeah, one thing we did have a conversations with Flume, the manufacturer that can do that detail. Some of our older meter do work well with Flume, but a majority of our meter doesn't work well with Flume. But it doesn't mean that we cannot look for other manufacturer. But that's one of the constraint that we have to that it doesn't work very well with our meter. Yeah.
So are we still making those calls when people, I've actually gotten that call twice when there's a leak. Are we still making those calls when people have a leak?
We do. When we notice unusual consumption, we do. And then we also offer, when we talk to the customers, we have the dye tablets to identify whether it's a toilet leak. So we do have some discussion with the customer of where to look for leaks.
I was at the Dole Plantation in Hawaii, standing in line to go on the tour, and my phone rang, and it was you guys calling me saying, "Rich, you have a leak." So thankfully, somebody came and turned the water off to the house, and we fixed it when we got back. But I'm glad we're still providing that service. That's super important and super powerful.
My next question is, if we were to attempt to institute mandatory gray water plumbing, would we do that on new construction via code or via an ordinance, or would the city?
I will let Jen do that.
I do have a little bit of experience with this. I worked for the city of Hayward, where through the building code they were trying to implement mandatory gray water, but they came across exactly what Irene talked about, that not all houses are suitable to install those laundry to landscape systems. When they're gravity, they essentially fall under an exception to be able to install that by the homeowner. But if they're a pumped system, they need to be permitted, and we would have to work very closely with the cities on it. And then the other one to just keep in mind is all of that fantastic gray water does feed to our recycled water system.
We need
And
that
we have
effluent.
a very robust recycled water system and customers that are eager to be connected.
Okay, my last question has to do with the residential outdoor water budget. For 2024, what information did you use to calculate the actual usage?
So that time we used the landscape area measurements that actually given by State Water Board to us. So they do a study using technology to identify the area that's supposed to be a irrigable area for all the residential houses. As I mentioned before too, there is some inaccuracy for our surface area. However, we do have to develop a method to revise that data because the regulatory require agency that want to revising the landscape area that they provided to us to get approval first, and then we need to provide a more robust methodology to identify the square footage before the State Water Board can approving it. So basically, they require us to have more robust method to calculate the data than their data.
So that really is a calculated, estimated guess. It's
No,
not.
it is given. Yeah, the landscape area measurements for the outdoor is given by the State Water Board.
That's it. Thank you.
I have one question and one comment. On the administrative cost on that slide, when you the 47,000 on top of the 151 to implement V. How was that determined? I assume it's an estimate.
Yeah, it is an estimate for the regulatory in order to performs the non-functional turf, looking at all the data, the outreach, and talking to a customer. So there is a staff time being estimated. However, the rebates is not including in there because the rebates is coming from the Zone 7 Enhanced Rebates Program, but the administrative costs is estimated based on the administrative costs.
I think back to before COVID when we implemented our recycled water program and the giveaway we were doing at the treatment plant. I think it generated a tremendous amount of awareness in our customer base about conservation and the benefits long term. So I'm optimistic that as you implement this going forward, that we're going to get some better results than the percentages that were shown me. Although I don't think those are bad considering the times we're living in, that 30% and the 36%. It's just an observation.
Thank you. I got a few questions, so I'm gonna try to move through pretty quickly. I turn on my mic, that would help, right? The LEF for 2025 on the outdoor, the target is 0.8. That essentially, based on your LEF diagram, is essentially starting to move in the direction of removing lawns from residents. Is that kind of sort of the direction that that's going in?
Not like I think the LEF basically introduced more native California plants. I would say that there's a small lawns is actually permitted on there, not permitted, it's included, can be included, but majority of the plan is looking at more like a California native plants.
Okay, so more drought resistant type.
Drought resistance, yes.
Okay. And then one of your comments you made was that we were on the lower side of the spectrum for water loss. Do we have any sort of ascertainment as far as what were the key drivers that are helping us be at that low? We were like in the 13% or whatever. You made it.
A lot of that is attributed to the age of our system.
Yeah,
So as
age
I
of
was
the
pointing out,
Yeah.
So we're kind of lucky in some senses right now that we don't
Yes.
have.
Yeah, because roughly 75% of our water system was built in 1995 or later. It's not very old.
Okay. So I guess kind of key takeaway is right now we're fortunate that could catch us. I noticed we have 47% on the Aquahawk portal. I know you guys are going to be focused on your outreach to try to increase that. I think we've been talking a lot about that in our outreach program as well. So it seems like that's an automatic nexus right there. Really good to hear about the improved website coming because I think that's kind of sort of another good takeaway, and you're hearing the public. We want to be easier to communicate with. On the survey that was performed, the 400 people, do we have any information regarding the 400 individuals, i.e. any geographic distribution, demographics, age profiles?
Yes, we do. Although it's breakdown for demographic, it's breakdown by percentage in Dublin and also San Ramon's.
Okay.
And then there is a demographic, in terms of either age or the housing components. Yeah.
Did we see a better response like with newer homes or older homes?
I don't have the answer right now, but I can provide that information. Yeah.
And I'll kind of tell you the reason why I'm after that is that has to do with the fluency level of somebody really understanding their home, understanding what it's about, and being aware, right? And so I think that would help us in our communication strategy. Like, hey, if it's a newer home, how much more can they really do? I don't know. I'm not trying to say that. But if it's an older home, what are their opportunities as they get ready to remodel, like you said, right? The toilet's going to be changed out. Well, that automatically helps quite a bit. So it's just kind of sort of those types of things that I'm interested in when I look at those statistics, because you bulk it together, it dilutes maybe our focal point. And then, to comment to Director Von Heater Leopold, I have at two of my houses, or my house and my mother in law's house, a system by Finn. And I think I mentioned it earlier on in my tenure here. And I use that, and that system automatically detects what type of appliance or figure it is based on the sonic range that would operate at. And so it relays it back, and I'm happy to show you what my interface looks like. But when we had a leak here, 2 months ago, it helped. It would have shut the system off if I wouldn't have overridden it. My sleep was more important, I guess, was the situation. So, the case in point is you can install a lot, and then it's up to us as individuals as well. With that, does staff have enough direction? And for appropriateness, let me just make sure I open it up to the public. Do we have any speaker cards?
No speaker cards.
And then I don't believe we have any action to take.
Correct.
Okay. So with that, we'll be moving on to item 9. Item 9A, board items. 9A1, Joint Power Authority and Committee Reports, the Tri-Valley Liaison Committee meeting that was held yesterday, attended by Director Halkett and myself. I'll let Director Halkett provide some thoughts, and then if he misses anything, I'll chime in.
Good meeting. The usual suspects. I asked a few questions, hopefully not too sharply. 2 presentations, one on fire preparedness by Cal Water, which I actually liked because Cal Water participated. That's awesome because they actually still provide a lot of water to people in our valley. So having them in the game was good. That one was the typical stuff. Generators, make sure you have power to the pump stations. Make sure if you lose the grid, you don't lose your water. And everybody answered those questions well. Staff was prepared and it was good. The other one was on a portfolio diversification plan by the zone, which I pushed a little bit because their portfolio diversification plan is more wells into the basin. And we all know that the basin's not a source of water, it's a place where we store water. And 85% of the water that is in the basin is imported. They're trying desperately to get some new wells online in Pleasanton to help them out with their issues with their PFAS. We surfaced and talked it through, and I think we all kind of agreed that we make sure that it's equitable for all of us, because if they're going to put if the zone's going to put new wells in for Pleasanton, that they're going to get a lot of benefit from, we just want to make sure that the costs are distributed in a fair way. Nothing was decided because that body's not a decision-making body, but I think we were heard. All right, that makes sense?
Yeah, and I think just some additional fun facts maybe as well. I wouldn't say it was fun facts, but it was facts. That the systems are designed for, handling a fire for 2 to 3 homes.
Mm-hmm.
And so anything more major than that obviously could be a big draw, and it's takes it into a different system reliability issue. And I think the bigger thing that they were really talking about is how prepared are we as a valley for wildfires, and what are the opportunities that we're leveraging and taking upon. And I think that was kind of sort of the real key takeaway. Regarding the Zone 7 wells, Director Halka did make a very clear point there. And the response back was more for improving the redundancy and reliability for the system by adding the 2 new wells, and the ability for the additional extraction based on the height of the well profile and the basin's, I guess, the storage lower points, right? Because right now, as you all know, we're now at 100% capacity of our water storage, or above. It's leaching out to the bottom west. And the essence there is we have good recharge, right? And now how are we able to leverage? And there, Pleasanton had a capacity requirement need, and so with the participation of using the Tri Valley partnerships, right? Essentially, they could leverage similar infrastructure and have the zone help support and manage it. And so cost became a topic. How it would be distributed, and it would be very similar, I guess, to how other agencies are having those agreements. So more to come on that. I think the mayor of Pleasanton did surface some public inquiry. Would be a fair way to say it, and they have a decision to make here in the near future. I forget the date, but it's very near. And so once the zone has taken their position, it's waiting on Pleasanton to act, and pending on Pleasanton's actions, we will now know some results.
Actually, thank you. That's important. At the very end of the meeting, Mayor Belch from Pleasanton introduced into the hopper for future topics connection fees, how they're calculated between the various districts, meters, and how those are handled between the various districts. That can be an interesting discussion. So we'll see how that one goes. Staff will have to finesse that one.
Yeah, I'm pretty
right, staff.
All right. Having said that, I think we covered that. Is there any questions from the board on that? All right. Moving on to item 9A2, submittal of written reports for days of service attended by directors. Written reports are due this evening. Anyone have anything to report out on?
Well, most of us went to the Mayor's Summit last Wednesday that Pleasanton Chamber of Commerce hosted. It was sort of a typical Mayor's Conference, Mayor's Summit, excuse me. Each mayor talked about different aspects. They talked about traffic. They talked about housing. What unfortunately that made it very straightforward. There was no opportunity to have an exchange of I'm doing better than you're doing, etc. So it was kind of, I don't mean to say dull, but all the information we could have gotten off all the websites. It just was information only rather than any kind of an exchange. But it was good. The food was good. Thanks. My driver, Steve, was my driver.
All right. Anybody else have anything else?
No, I mean, same thing. Attended the Tri-Valley Mayor's Summit last Wednesday. I think it was the 15th of October. And just to add to what Georgine was saying, it was pretty, a lot of it was on housing and talking about the infrastructure and economic development. I think there were a couple of times where folks try to maybe suggest they were better than some other cities. But for the most part, it was pretty straightforward. And then we had the opportunity to sit with the Zone 7 board as well.
Excellent.
Yeah. The only thing I have to add is had a great conversation with a Zone 7 board member, which I haven't met before, fellow hydrogeologist, so we got to talk geo-nerd stuff. And Mayor Balch said out loud what we've all been kind of thinking about for a while, that this east side, he said it out loud. He said it right in front of everybody, so it's not secret that these east side developments are probably going to happen, and they're probably going to be annexed. Is that fair, Jim?
I heard a yes. All right. With that, we'll move on to item 9A3. Any future items from any members? Seeing none. We'll move on to 9B, staff reports. 9B1, general manager's monthly report.
The general manager's monthly report for September is attached, and staff's available to answer any questions. I have no upcoming events to report on this evening. And lastly, the closed session will be held in the general manager's conference room tonight.
Excellent. Well, that was our cue. Moving on to item 10, closed session. We'll retreat to the GM's conference room. 2 items. Please mute your mics. Thank you. All right. The board meeting is back in open session. The closed session has concluded. There was no reportable action from closed session. Moving on to item 12, adjournment. The meeting is now concluded at 8:16 p.m. Have a good evening.